September 11th is a date etched in America's memory. But in 2009 in Lexington, Kentucky, the date marked another tragedy. That morning, neighbors in a tony corner of the city's downtown woke to the news that a young woman had been gunned down in cold blood outside her home. The killer? A man with a political pedigree of the highest order. A man born into privilege and a dynasty in Kentucky politics.
Welcome to Kentucky Case Files, a true crime podcast that explores the dark, complex, and often haunting crimes in the Bluegrass State. I'm Marcus Rowland.
And I'm Emily Steele. This is a 3-part series on a crime that shocked Kentucky and made international news. This is a story of Amanda Ross and her murderous fiancé, the Steve Nunn Case. Part 1, Power, Obsession, and Fear.
He is the highest profile Kentucky murder suspect in recent memory.
Lexington 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, my name is at 541 West Short. We heard a shot fired and a woman screaming.
I called my associate director and I said, oh my gosh, Steve Nunn just killed Amanda Ross. Like I knew.
His own bill was going to put him to death.
Now, Mark, our first case was a close one for you because as an attorney, you actually worked with the lawyers who represented Clay Shrout. This case hits a little closer to home for me because I'm a professor who researches politics. And in particular, a lot of my work has focused on some of the more unseemly aspects of politics, corruption, scandals, and violence. But this case is beyond anything I've studied systematically. It is truly stunning.
You're right. It's a horrible tragedy, but its relationship to the Kentucky political elite makes it so much more shocking. Steve Nunn was born on Election Day, 1952, into Kentucky royalty. The only son of Louis B. Nunn, the 52nd governor of the state. A Republican, the elder Nunn was known for his conservative stances, particularly on taxes and education. The Associated Press called him a defining figure in Kentucky politics and went on to write, quote, an opponent who attacked him could be assured of a blistering counterattack, end quote. Here's Louis B. Nunn when he was first elected in 1968.
And we've got a message for him in Kentucky this year, and we've got one for him in Washington next year.
He was larger than life and cast a long shadow, and some called him the John Wayne of Kentucky politics. Even today, nearly 60 years after he was first elected, his name carries weight in the bluegrass. So as you can imagine, his son, Steve, was surrounded by political influence and legacy. He was raised amid power, graduated from Transylvania University, briefly attended law school, and seemed destined for public service. Starting to follow in his father's footsteps, he was elected and served as a state representative for 15 years from 1991 to 2007. Here's Steve Nunn during his gubernatorial run in 2003.
I love you all. I love the people of Kentucky.
He built a reputation as a moderate Republican and was a champion of health care, people with disabilities, and child protection. Kentucky Case Files talked to Nunn's ex-wife, Tracy Dameron Pergram, author of the memoir Trail of Feathers.
He worked very closely with First Lady Judy Patton. Steve was her number one man to pass bills for domestic violence in women, and he also was the champion for children with disabilities. Steve was always for the underdog. He was known for that.
In a move that would later prove ironic, he even co-sponsored a bill that made violation of an emergency protective order an aggravating circumstance, making it a capital offense when the victim died as a result of the violation. Nunn's legislation became law in 1998 and was one of the first statutes in the nation to connect domestic violence orders with capital punishment eligibility. Here again is Tracy Dameron Pergram.
I was right with him when he passed that, and that's the bill that would have given him the death penalty.
By all accounts, Nunn was a man working for the public good, even if he was doing so in the shadow of his legendary controlling father. But power can mask darkness. Despite Nunn's success, his colleagues in the Kentucky General Assembly saw signs of volatility. And despite appearances, there was tension between Nunn and his father. Relatives said they had been at odds for years. When Louis and his wife Beulah divorced in 1994, Steve sided with his mother and, by some accounts, intervened when Louis tried to strike Beulah. That drove a wedge between father and son. As reported by CBS News, Louis wrote a letter to Steve in 1994 accusing him of physical abuse, inflicted not just on Louis but on other family members. The Lexington Herald-Leader reported that in 1997, Louis wrote Steve another letter accusing him of abuse and effectively disowning him. "You have no family. Someday God will humble you." Tracy Dameron Pergram.
When I met Steve, he and his father had not spoken for maybe 10 years. And Steve loved his daddy more than anything. You know how many people looked up to Governor Nunn. Can you imagine being a son and then you're put on the back burner?
Tracy described considerable dysfunction in the Nunn family, which she says caused the rift between Nunn and his father. Tracy did her best to mend the fences between the former governor and his son, and by all appearances, she succeeded.
Still, Steve Nunn remained on the family path. In 2003, he ran for governor and lost due to what those around him characterized as general instability, both in managing the campaign and in his behavior. As a consequence, he didn't just lose the race. He lost part of his reputation. The hits kept coming for Nunn. In 2004, his father, the political titan, died. In 2006, Nunn lost his long-held House seat. The same year, he and his second wife divorced. According to reports, Nunn began to unravel, behaving erratically, drinking excessively, and womanizing. Here is what Nunn's ex-wife, Tracy Dameron Pergram, had to say.
And then just like that, it was taken away. After his daddy died, it just consumed him. And he just kind of lost his way. And I didn't really know what to do.
He posted his profile on a website called sugardaddies.com, looking for dates. Nunn was also reportedly showing signs of deep depression, paranoia, and emotional detachment from friends and family.
Tracy Dameron Pergram.
Steve started changing, started wearing his dad's clothes. He would pound his fist on the desk and say, "I'm Louis B. Nunn." I would get phone calls daily about his behavior. He would go to public events drunk, could hardly walk, the smell of alcohol all over him. He just kept spiraling and spiraling, and no one could save him. And he did say to me, "You almost saved me, Tracy." And I said, "Steve, you can only save yourself." And he didn't. I know that I experienced the best of Steve. I did. But I also experienced the worst of him as well at the end. It was just beautiful, beautiful time. And Steve was doing such good things in Kentucky. I choose to focus on the Steve Nunn that I knew that died in my eyes and in my heart before he killed someone. Like the Steve Nunn that I knew died after his daddy died. Like I didn't know this person anymore and I didn't want to know him.
Still, Nunn had connections. In 2007, Governor Steve Beshear, a Democrat, appointed Nunn, a Republican, as Deputy Secretary of the State Cabinet for Health and Family Services in the state capital of Frankfort. That's where he would cross paths with Amanda Ross.
Ross was an up-and-coming young Kentuckian. She was a graduate of Boston University and had a good job at the Kentucky Department of Insurance. She owned a home in a charming gated townhouse community set amid the historic homes in downtown Lexington. First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln's childhood home was just a block away. Ross had a strong network of friends and a drive for public service, being elected to the board of the Lexington Humane Society. She also came from a loving family. Her mother lived nearby and grew up amid power and wealth. Her father was a successful financier and political insider. Friends described Ross as beautiful, smart, fun, very intelligent. One called her a mover and a shaker in Lexington. She made things happen. She was always happy, bubbly, full of fun, they said. And by all accounts, she was going places. Now, according to Fayette County marriage and divorce records, Ross was briefly married between October 2006 and December 2007. The marriage seems to have ended quietly and without significant media attention. But it was during this time that she appears to have met Steve Nunn in Frankfurt, where they both worked, in about September 2007. Friends say she was smitten, and despite a nearly 30-year age gap, she was 27, he was 55. They soon began dating. The relationship progressed very quickly, and by March 2008, they were living together in Ross's townhouse. By October of 2008, they were engaged. But just as fast as it blossomed, the relationship quickly became rocky.
Ross's friend Penny Bentley described to the ABC News program 2020 an incident at a restaurant in which Nunn called Ross a bitch and she dumped a glass of water in his lap and walked out. On another occasion, Ross told Bentley that she suspected Nunn was cheating on her. Bentley recounted that Ross was attempting to go through Nunn's cell phone. He wouldn't give her the password, so she threw it in a river. Friends noticed Ross withdrawing. Nunn became jealous, controlling. Ross told friends about Nunn's temper, his jealousy, and his attempt to dictate her every move. And soon after the engagement was announced, it was called off and Nunn moved out. But the two remained in contact. On February 17, 2009, what began as a small spat soon escalated. Bentley said that Ross told her she and Nunn were discussing dinner plans for the following night, and a heated argument ensued. Ross told Bentley that Nunn pushed her and hit her. She hit him back, cutting his face with a ring. That's when Ross filed an emergency protection order against Nunn. Now, Mark, what exactly is the process for obtaining an emergency protective order?
In short, the petitioner files for an emergency protective order, or an EPO, as they call them, to prevent the respondent from contacting them, coming within a certain distance of them, and perhaps there could be other limitations. A judge then reviews the petition and schedules a hearing, and the judge determines there whether an act of domestic violence and abuse has occurred and might occur again. So if granted, a domestic violence order may prohibit contact or communication, among other issues.
So the first step is an emergency protective order, which then the need for that order gets reviewed by a judge, and that's when it might get declared something like a domestic violence order. Is that the idea?
Correct.
So in the case of Ross and Nunn, she filed for the emergency protective order, and then they appeared in court subsequently for the judge to make a ruling in the case.
For that, correct. So
Great, because in the court proceedings in early 2009, Nunn claimed that Ross struck him and he merely struck back to defend himself. Ross claimed this was the fifth such occasion of abuse. Media reported that Nunn told the judge, "We have a tumultuous relationship with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of good moments, and some just terrible ones, but I'm not a threat to her." Despite Nunn's defense, the judge granted Ross's EPO and ordered that they have no contact for 1 year. Here's what Darlene Thomas, the executive director of Greenhouse 17, an advocacy agency committed to ending intimate partner abuse, had to say about the proceedings.
Amanda almost did not get a protective order because he said they never lived together. They were never married and they didn't have a child in common. So they argued she couldn't have a protective order because she didn't qualify. And we argued that, yes, she should, and you don't have to live together. Fortunately, she brought 2 pieces of mail that had been sent, to her or to him at her address. And then the court allowed it only because she had to prove they were living together. And we were trying to educate the legislators of the need to have legislation to protect dating violence.
So interesting that it essentially came down to, despite the he said, she said, it seems to have come down to the fact that Amanda could demonstrate that Steve was actually living at her townhouse.
And that's scary that 2 pieces of mail were between her and getting that order.
Interesting too that if claiming that sort of she was as violent as he, claiming he wasn't a threat to her, but then maybe also trying to just walk it back on a technicality. Interesting, the gymnastic that Nunn was going through to try to get things to go his way. Within 48 hours of the ruling, Nunn tendered his resignation from the State Department of Health and Family Services. After all, in an ironic twist, the organization he helped run was the agency that oversees the state's domestic violence programs. Steve Nunn, once a respected lawmaker, saw his political career effectively ended. He lost his job with the state. What was left of his reputation was gone. And in his mind, he had lost control. But he didn't go away.
Ross tried to move on after the protective order was granted, but according to friends, she still lived in fear. She carried a gun with her everywhere. It was even nearby when she showered. Ross became more withdrawn, more nervous. She told friends that Nunn was stalking her. On at least one occasion, he was peeping into her windows. She even called a walkway near the home O.J.'s Alley, referencing the notorious place where O.J. Simpson was accused of killing his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. According to police records, on September 9th, 2009, Ross told her supervisor that Nunn had been following her and that she was afraid he was going to kill her. Around 6:30 the morning of September 11th, 2009, 2 days after she had expressed concerns to her friend, her premonition came true.
Lexington 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, my name is at 541 West Short.
Do you need police, fire, or
I
ambulance?
believe police. We heard a shot fired and a woman screaming.
Do you know where it came from, sir?
Either in the back of our house or somewhere to the side of our house.
Okay.
It's a townhouse community.
Okay. I'm showing that you're 541 West Short, number 12.
Correct.
Okay, and it's to the back of you?
To the back, to the side of us, we're not really sure. Obviously, the shot was fired, we think. I'm not an expert at guns.
How many did you hear, sir?
Just one.
Okay.
Three, I'm sorry. My wife said she heard three.
Okay.
And a woman screaming.
All right, we're going to get someone over, sir.
Thank you.
One neighbor said they saw a man running toward the townhouse community's gate. When police arrived, they found Ross on the sidewalk outside her home, in a pool of blood, shot multiple times. Her purse was found nearby with her handgun still inside. Compounding the tragedy, her mother was out early that morning walking her dog when she stumbled across the crime scene. Aware of her daughter's struggles and concerns, she told investigators that when she saw the police presence, she just knew something had happened to Amanda. Ross was pronounced dead at the University of Kentucky Albert B. Chandler Medical Center, named after another Kentucky governor whose term ended 8 years before Nunn's father's began. Darlene Thomas heard the news reports of a shooting at the Opera House Square Apartments, instantly knew what had happened.
As soon as I saw the news report, even though they had not released the names, I called my associate director and I said, "Oh my gosh, Steve Nunn just killed Amanda Ross." Like I knew. As soon as I knew where the apartment complex was. So those of us doing this work were very familiar with the fact that she had filed a protective order. It was in a lot of the newspapers about it because he was, a former state representative and he was currently serving in a governmental capacity as the Secretary of the Cabinet for Family and Children. So it was known that she had made allegations and that there was protective order hearing and that she had a protective order entered on her behalf. Those of us in my world kind of knew what was going on. And then, of course, he took her life couple of months later, I believe, after the protective order was entered.
Given the domestic violence order that was in place, police quickly named a suspect, and they knew where to look. In part 2, the manhunt begins. A standoff in a cemetery, and a former legislator faces the law that he himself created. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, call 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE. You're not alone.
Sourcing for this podcast came from our independent reporting as well as the Lexington Herald Leader, the Louisville Courier-Journal, Bowling Green Daily News, the New York Times, Kentucky Educational Television, Wave 3 News, WLKY, WKYT, NBC News, ABC News, CBS News, the news programs 2020 and 48 Hours, Louisville Public Media, and BehindTheBlueWall.blogspot.com. Special thanks to the hosts of Murder Police Podcast for their assistance.